The Telecommunications Development Levy Amendment Bill is set down for committee stage forthwith. I declare the House in committee for consideration of the Telecommunications Development Amendment Bill.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Chair.
Members, the House and Committee on the Telecommunications Development Levy Amendment Bill, and this debate is by clauses, and the question is Clause 1 stand part. I call Chris Hipkins.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I'm very happy to take a brief call on this particular legislation. And I want to say to the government, first of all, that there are people in my own electorate, and despite being in an urban Wellington electorate, I have quite a significant rural hinterland in that electorate, and there are people in the rural part of my electorate who are very supportive of the idea of getting better rural broadband. But the issue here is many of them supposedly, according to the government's definition, have already got rural broadband, and yet it doesn't blimmin' well work. And the number of complaints that I've had from my office from people who the government claim get 5 megabits per second rural broadband, who are claiming that they don't, has been increasing exponentially. So they're getting flyers in the mail saying connect to this broadband service, it's great, you've got rural broadband. But of course what they don't say is that in order to get that particular speed, they have to be the only person connected to it at that given time. And the more people that connect to it, the slower the speed gets, to the point where somebody at home, and if they have cellular connections, getting faster connections through using their cell phone, and in some of these cases they're in cell phone dead zone, so they're not even getting that, so they're getting very, very slow broadband speeds to the type that we might have had once upon a time when we had old dial-up over the old copper network, and in fact they were faster than what they're getting now in supposedly broadband connections. So I want to say on behalf of the people in my electorate and the rural communities in my electorate, and I'm talking about Whitemans Valley and Kaitoki and Mangaroa and those areas, and I hope she's writing those areas down, they do want rural broadband, but the government claims they've got it and they don't, because the rural broadband's actually slower than what they would have got under the old dial-up system, and because the more people that are connected to it, the slower the speed becomes. And these are small business people who might be working from home. There are small farmers in that area, and they are not getting what the government promised them. So they would come to me and they will say, why is it that now the government's spending all this extra money to roll this out to its next phase when the first phase isn't working? Why is it that we as consumers are paying for a service that we are not able to get? These are people who are paying now. They are paying for broadband now as of today, and they are not getting the broadband that they are paying for. And potentially the cost of that broadband is going to go up because this is an extra tax. Then taxes ultimately get passed on to the consumer, to the end user. So the government are increasing taxes despite their very clear pre-election promise that there would be no new taxes under National. This is the first of 3 new taxes. This debate here is the debate on the first of 3 new taxes that they have introduced with this budget. Ultimately, the consumer will pay the cost of that. It is yet another broken promise. I want to say I support full broadband availability to all New Zealanders, and I would support reasonable measures to do that where there was evidence that they were working and where there was evidence that they were actually going to deliver that. But spending $450 million, that's what we're talking about, $450 million, despite the fact that MB has admitted there is no business case or analysis of the Rural Broadband Initiative's effectiveness. That is staggering that the government would spend this quantity of money without actually establishing whether it's any blimmin' good. Because I can tell you now that the people who have been coming into my office to complain about the quality of their broadband connection are very firmly of the view that it isn't any good, that they are not getting the speeds of rural broadband that the government already claimed that they are. So when the government say, and what was the numbers, they said something like 86% of rural households and businesses are getting speeds of up to 5 megabits per second, they should put the very clear rider on that, that's only if they're the only person in that area connected. And the clear reality of the situation is in many of these rural areas, particularly the rural areas closer to the city centres where there tends to be higher density population, and even in a rural area, the broadband speeds are woefully slow. Absolutely slow. So we've got people getting in their cars with their laptops and driving over the hill, literally into Upper Hutt, because that's the only way they can get a decent broadband speed. Good for the cafes in Upper Hutt if you're a business person working in Whiteman's Valley, because they'll end up going over and sitting in one of the cafes there, so you've got access to decent broadband, because they're not getting it despite the government's claim that they actually are. Now, I'm supportive. I want to say that over and over again. I support rural broadband, but I want to make sure if we're going to spend money on rural broadband, that's actually what's being delivered. Right. And it's not being delivered. The government claim that Whiteman's Valley has rural broadband. It does not. The government have not delivered that, and now they're saying they want to spend more money on a program that clearly isn't delivering what was promised.
Well, I'm going to call Tracy Martin.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much.